Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to today's sessions. Today is Tuesday and we start our day already 1.5 hours after opening bell. Uh, let's have a quick look. Basically, how are the stocks moving? So, with the big movers, we have SunW, the one that was down almost 11% yesterday, is now 11% up. Enphase gaining back some of its losses from yesterday. Canadian Solar. Uh, I mean, these two guys for me are really interesting companies. Just that they're still at the prices that I think they might go lower, but we don't know yet. We have Run, we have well, Genus, we have Blink. So they were lower at the day and now they are actually regaining some. So they went as low as 39, but they're now 42. Wafer, Solar Edge. So some of the solar stocks basically are gaining some of their losses from yesterday. The losers. Now we have Riot, Mara, and Can, the three Bitcoin basically brokers or mining stocks. The Bitcoin itself. Uh, we have Sinus Surgical. We have OGI. Tilray and Alpha are also down. AMC giving back some of the gains. BNGO. BNGO has been a tease for me. I really wanted this to go down so that I can buy. I put some orders already for it, but hasn't been successful to hit any of those. So I think that this is a very good price right now, and I actually still feel like that if you get at these current prices, if you go for BNGO, uh, it would be you would be very happy a couple of months from now on. But anyway, I am still waiting to see if I can get. I think this is a very first basically support, and if it comes down here, then I get something. I'm not sure if I can really get something. The momentum is going down. The stochastic RSI is going down for 30 minutes. So I think we might get somewhere around this. But when I look at, let's say, in 2 hours. So this is actually not decided yet. It is going down more than it's going up basically. So I expect this to go lower. I still have like at 777 and 723, 705 and 6.65. If it goes to this level, I will add even more, but I doubt that it happens. Okay, the next one to look, PLTR, it's down 2% today. Mm, 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 mm. I actually am feeling a bit, cocky about it. I feel like I can get this under 22. Uh, so it went actually under 21. I bought some, but again, the problem is that it has been at good value all this time around here, and then it went down, and then it was gaining back. So I bought something top, but then again it came down, so my average cost is not yet very good in this one, but I have no worries on this one. It easily will get to this top 40 or things like that, but at least easily going to 30, it's not a problem in my mind. Next one, let's look at IDEX, the 30-minute IDEX. So not really clear. It's actually moving around this region. If I look for our the momentum is basically up, but it is actually cooling down a bit. So for me this one is a better indicator, but of course it's a slower. This one is more reactive, so if the direction of these two are not the same, I usually do not take the trade. So that's the idea behind this. NNDM, it's going down. I love to get some below 8, and hasn't been successful to get it now. But we'll see what happens. I still feel like that this one can go lower a bit more. What is my target? It's 760 and 6. I don't think 6.7 is reasonable, but let's check a couple of things. Let's go an NDM. So 790 is actually let's have a look at 4 hour. Maybe 780 is a good point to get this one. Let's go some yeah, this one sounds good now. Yeah, let's see. AT. I think these days when I feel like this is a deep buying market, so these things will go up. Just you should be patient. Tilray. Actually, Tilray is one of the worst entries that I've ever had in any stock. And this was against many of my principles, but I did it, and now I'm suffering. But again, it's a long-term play for me, so I'm willing to hold this for a year or two to get the gains and actually see that it grows. I think this is the top brand in the cannabis industry. So let's see. BNG, okay, it's actually coming back a bit now. I still think it should go down. maybe not. So it comes down here, it is reversing, and if you look for 4 hours, this is actually going up. CrowdStrike, okay, it went over 190. For me, CrowdStrike below 190 is a good buy. Is a good entry if you can go to one lower than 180 or then below 170 or 175. These are excellent entries. So that about it. About DraftKings, let's check DraftKings. So what happens here is that the momentum is up. I think what happens is that because this is already at overbought region, so there will be a slight pullback and then it will go up again. So that's my or it can basically stay up there like this. But generally that's my expectation, that we will stay around this, but then it will take off from here to at least 70 or these kind of ranges. And it has relatively, it's 10-12% high there, or upside potential there. Let's have a look at yield. It's going down. Today is earning paychecks. That's not good. TDOC is a good company. I think in long term, if you hold this one, this is a very good company. But during the times of uncertainty, this is one of those ones that sells off a lot. But this is really the way that it's gonna work. Like, you like it or not, this is the way that our medical procedures will go on. So you can't really go wrong with it if you can hold for a long time. A power plant 3 years early. Let's have a look if I want to add something to DraftKings. No, I don't want to actually add to this. I feel like it comes here, hits there, comes back, and then goes up. Maybe. I don't want to buy now. What else? Let's check Virgin Galactic. 4 hours. Yeah, it's cooling off a bit, and we'll see if it comes and hit here or not. Here there is a really good upside here. Let's keep 30 min. So this was a buy at this position. See, you have both momentum, and why I do not say here, because after this time is closed, well, this is actually a very good position. This one here does not have a very wide stance. So you see here it's very wide, the distance between these two lines, but when you are here it's not that much. So I usually wait a bit more And this one gives me more clarification on that. And then from here, and then you had this one. So you can come up till this line. So it was a good trade to 3%. My problem with Virgin Galactic, I think the spreads on eToro is a bit too high. Not really that one. Not really that much actually, now that I see. Not, I was incorrect, so it's not really bad. If you want to see bad spreads, let's check this one. Really too high in my opinion, but what can you do?
Well, we are now at about 60,000+ new cases a day. That is a precarious situation to be in. One of the things in our favor is that we're having a very successful rollout of vaccines. We've now have over 50,000 people in the country are fully vaccinated. Over 100,000 have received at least one dose. And we're averaging between 3 and 4,000, million, 3 and 4 million vaccinations per day. So the way I look at it, it really is kind of a race between the implementation of the vaccines and the danger or not of there being a bona fide surge where you speak up. We're seeing it doing this. Hopefully, the protection that's afforded to the community by the vaccinations will blunt any surge that is reminiscent of the previous surges that we've had, which were really quite steep in the incline of the surge. So the next few weeks are going to be critical. I believe that the vaccine will actually have a major impact on preventing us from having a classical surge that we've seen before. But we can't be overconfident, which is one of the reasons why we keep saying over and over again, let's not declare victory prematurely by pulling back on the public health measures of mask wearing, physical distancing, and avoiding congregate settings. It is too premature to do that. We need to hang on a bit longer. We all understand that we're all feeling COVID-19 fatigue and we want to cut loose and get back to some degree of normality. And that will come, for absolutely certain that will come. But we don't want to jump the gun on it and precipitate another surge.
And I know that you've talked many times about the idea that we have to have a majority of Americans of all ages vaccinated in order to be able to remove masks, and the big question of when do we reach that herd immunity. But factored into that as well, I know, is the idea of what happens when we do in fact reopen, when we do get to the point that we can start moving around comfortably. I know the idea of vaccine passports has been brought up multiple times. So in the previous administration, we saw that there was definitely a clear rule of not overreaching and respecting that side of the argument. But we did start seeing a mask mandate at the start of the year, at least in federal buildings and places. So where do you see sort of the role, and why can't the government take a role of sort of a middle ground and advise like yourself take on the role of saying, well, you know, these certain entities should require vaccine passport, large theaters, say, for example, but leave the rest of it up to smaller businesses?
Well, I mean, there is and has been for quite a while a reluctance on the part of the federal government to mandate down things that might be perceived by some people as being unfair and discriminatory, if not coercive. Now, at the local level, as you've alluded to, it is quite conceivable that there will be organizations. It could be universities. It could be places of employment. It could be any of a number of entities that would require proof of vaccination before a person can either enter or participate in a certain location or a certain function. But there is clearly a reluctance on the part of the federal government, and I don't believe that's going to change. That they do not want to dictate at the federal level things that locally could be perceived as being discriminatory or potentially punitive.
On that note, we know that right now there are increasing guidance for traveling, both on cruises and on flights, opening it up for those who have been fully vaccinated. But what we see globally is still a scenario of not enough vaccinations and countries still closing their borders to the US. Do you anticipate that maybe other countries will follow suit on this rule of fully vaccinated individuals being allowed to move more freely?
Well, I think that certainly is going to be a pattern you're going to see globally. I mean, the more people that get vaccinated and the greater the proportion of vaccinated people in society, you're going to see the level of infections go way down. That's just going to be a natural consequence.
You like it or not, they're already doing it. I have friends who, when they wanted to actually get on a plane, they had to do tests, and then when they were getting to UK in this example, they had to actually basically go and buy kits of tests for themselves, so that after some days they can actually take the test again to ensure that one. So if you don't have those kind of tests, they were not allowed to actually enter the country or something like that. So it's already happening like that.
Talk about what one can do in the setting of the home when you're with other vaccinated people and even unvaccinated people, that you could pull back on some of the guidelines, not necessarily wear a mask, have physical contact. Recently, they came out saying that people who are vaccinated, when you fly, you do not need to be tested when you go or return from a destination unless it is dictated by the destination that you're going to. You don't have to quarantine when you come back from another country. So gradually you're going to see a rolling out of flexibility of things that vaccinated people can do.
Yeah. Again, this is already happening. There are too many restrictions. Well, yeah. Honestly, I'm also really fatigued about all these restrictions, but this is the way it is now. I think we have to just be positive and just do what we think is best for our family or ourselves. I don't want to really get into debate of if there is more restrictions needed or less. That's another discussion, not really my specialty. So I let you people to actually decide on that one. Yeah, but let's see what else do we have here. Vanguard and integration of non-crop specialty business. QDEL. I think QDEL is one of the good companies with a lot of growth potential. If I look this a day stage, it is here. This is actually one of those cases that, see, this one is, both are showing the correct direction, but it doesn't move much. But let's have a look at 4 hours. QDEL. Well, I would wait on this. I would wait on this and then see where it takes us. Okay, so what happened is that Mara actually is gaining back some of their losses. It went down as low as 51.50, but yeah. Let's see if there is anything else here we can discuss.
A mixed picture for stocks here in the U.S. at the moment. The Dow trading very slightly lower, just 16 points lower. The S&P up about 0.1%. NASDAQ up about 0.25%. So pretty mild trading when you look at the price action in today's session. A little less mild, though, when it comes to crude oil. Crude oil futures up 3.5% above $60 a barrel today, helped in part perhaps by that new IMF forecast for 6% global growth around the world. And the 10-year T-note, it is at 1.67%, a 5 basis point decline in that yield today. On behalf of myself, Miles, and Brian, have a great day, everybody. Akiko and Zach going to take you through the next 2 hours.
So what else should we look? Let's have a look at general market, how it's moving. Square is 232, Microsoft down, Facebook down a bit, Google a bit. These guys were the huge winners yesterday. And Neo, CrowdStrike, PayPal, Visa. Let's have a look at Visa. Maybe I can buy a bit of Visa now, just small amount. Oh no. Well, when you look at day, you actually have a lot of room. Not a lot of room. If I can take it around here. I wanted to buy a 200, that was never met the target, so yeah. So if this one actually, now that I see, if this one comes to 290, really, this is a good place. You have, yeah. So let's have a look. This one. Let's have a look at the day. To 26. That's a bit too low to get, but we just set our lines. We shouldn't decide for market what it will do. We should just follow it. So no, that's not really a problem for me, but I understand why some people don't like it. So Yeah, this one looks like to happen. Anything else?
So, we are very much in support of having this kind of a global minimum corporate tax.
And then you also mentioned, obviously, this is coming on the heels of that World Economic Outlook, where the IMF did upgrade its economic outlook across the board. The IMF now expecting global output to expand by 6% in 2021, with the United States receiving actually one of the largest upgrades in this report relative to the last update that the IMF had. That was back in January. So now the IMF expects 6.4% growth stateside. And that would also imply actually getting back to pre-COVID levels of output this year. But the IMF is cautioning that the outlook is still fraught with high uncertainty, and tax policy could be one of those things. But it sounds like, if anything, the IMF says that it actually thinks international tax reform would be going in the right direction if it does end up going with Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen's proposal for that global minimum corporate tax. So certainly worth watching as the IMF spring meetings kick off and those finance ministers meet this week. Akiko, Zach.
Brian Cheung bringing us that report. Thanks so much for that. Let's bring our first guest for the hour.
Level.
We've got Chris Brightman, Research Affiliates CIO. And Chris, you've been listening to Brian sort of break down the outlook that we got from the IMF today, looking at 6. Affiliates CIO. And Chris, you've been listening to Brian sort of break down the outlook that we got from the IMF today, looking at 6.4% growth in the U.S. alone. What does that mean from a market's perspective, and how much of that optimism you think has already been baked in?
Well, an awful lot of optimism has been baked in. You can see that from the near all-time high levels of stock market indices, but also very stretched valuations. About the only way that you can justify the lofty multiples that average stocks and particularly the market darling meme stocks are trading at is extraordinarily low interest rates. You can make an argument that the yield on equities is reasonable given the extraordinarily low yields, negative real rates. But if you begin to forecast that interest rates will rise and normalize, then you'd expect equities to fall back a bit as the discount rates increase. So that's why all of the focus on market pricing of inflation and Fed rate increases with respect to plotting the course of future stock prices.
Yeah, and Chris, I mean, it's interesting to be having this discussion globally, what it means globally for the U.S. to come out with the largest increase in growth in the IMF's forecast, because when we talk a lot about inflation risks and government spending, the U.S. really trails Europe in that regard, even though we are increasing our spending through all this. So I'm curious to get your take on maybe why now might be the right time if we do. I mean, just want to stress the point. I'm saying the U.S. is the only large economy to surpass the level of GDP by 2022 in the absence of this pandemic. So if you think about that, it would seem to indicate, and of course we're hearing this from Janet Yellen, if everybody else is agreeing to kind of maybe raise tax rates or stop that race to the bottom, then it does seem that the U.S. would be operating from a position of strength to at least increase spending in the short term.
Well, I think there's no question that the U.S. is being much more aggressive in terms of fiscal stimulus than most other countries. And this is a global issue. It's important not to equate a national economy with the collection of companies that trade on a national stock market exchange. So the monetary policy of the US as the world's reserve currency definitely spills over and affects the pricing of securities across the world. The question is not really about levels. It's about flows and rate of change. Larry Summers has noted that the size of stimulus provided in the U.S., even before we talk about the infrastructure bill now under debate, is roughly 3 times the size of the output gap in the United States. Is that enough to cause inflation? I think the answer for most policymakers is we just don't know. It's a bold, it's a huge program. Certainly could be inflationary. You'd have to say, given the size of the stimulus relative to the size of the output gap, it does raise the risks of an inflation problem.
When you look at the sheer size of the debt, though, we did hear from IMF's chief economist saying that she's not too worried about that. She believes the U.S. has the ability to service its debt, that it has improved largely because of lower rates. Do you agree with that?
I do agree. It's a kind of a fact that given the extraordinarily low interest rates that we have at present, the debt service is not troubling at all. On the other hand, you can't spend more than you produce in perpetuity. You can certainly send out a few $1,000s of stimulus checks to everybody in the United States, and that's almost certainly the right thing to do for disaster relief. Many of the people that are receiving the stimulus checks probably don't need them, but I have sympathy for the idea that too much effort at carefully targeting only those that are deserving just ends up in a bureaucratic nightmare and not getting the stimulus to those who really need it. But you just run a simple thought experiment. You can't send everybody $1 million. That would obviously be inflationary. At some point, the deficit spending, just the flows, forget about the amount of debt outstanding. That's probably not all that important. The question is, what's going on in the future? How much printing of money and sending it to people becomes inflationary? We all know that at some point it does. We just, frankly, don't know what that point is.
Yes, still a big question mark there. Research affiliate CIO Chris Brightman, it's good to talk to you today. I appreciate you stopping by. Let's turn our attention now to the turmoil at Credit Suisse. The Swiss bank reporting a near $5 billion loss from its involvement with the hedge fund Archegos Capital. It's now looking to shake up its executive team as well. Yahoo Finance's Oscar Williams-Groot joining us from London today. Oscar, you've been tracking the story from the very beginning. Credit Suisse at least trying to be very forthcoming and saying they are trying to sort of stem the losses here. But $5 billion, that's a lot of money.
It is, and I think the changes announced today are probably best summed up as necessary but not sufficient. They announced today, Credit Suisse, that they, as you say, are going to lose about $4.7 billion on their business with Archegos Capital, which blew up last week. And that is going to push them to around a loss of just shy of $1 billion in the first quarter alone of this year, supported by good business elsewhere. The shares actually rose in early trade, with analysts saying that there was some relief among investors that Credit Suisse weren't forced to raise fresh capital to cover these losses. However, they are taking a long, hard look at themselves and making some changes on the back of this huge loss. Investment bank chief Brian Chin is out, as is Lara Werner, the chief risk and compliance officer. Credit Suisse has also launched 2 independent investigations, one into Archegos Capital and the bank's dealing with that client, and another into Greensill. Greensill Capital is another major client that has blown up in recent weeks and caused a major headache for the company. Credit Suisse ran funds that invested around $10 billion in Greensill's supply chain finance paper. Now, the losses from that business are not yet clear. JP Morgan said today they estimate that Credit Suisse may be forced to set aside around $2 billion to cover potential litigation linked to that business. Thomas Gottstein, the chief executive of Credit Suisse, said today that they are fully committed to addressing these situations and pledged that serious lessons will be learned. But as I said at the top, it's not clear that the actions announced today will draw a line under it. UBS saying today that the issues at Credit Suisse could actually lead to industry-wide changes around things like risk disclosures, transparency, and how family offices are dealt with in relation to hedge funds. The shares did actually rally a little bit earlier today, but are trading flat in Zurich now. They are down still 20% from where they were before the Archegos blow up. So clearly there's a lot of ground for Credit Suisse to make up. A new chairman arrives in May, and his plans for the business will be closely watched.
All right, Yahoo Finance's Oscar Williams Group, appreciate you bringing us the latest there with the focus on Credit Suisse. Of course, the spillover effect also impacting the holdings of Archegos as well, as more shares are unwound there. Want to spotlight those in our stock spotlight here in today's session. We are seeing shares of Discovery and Viacom CBS, both of those pretty substantive pieces of the Archegos fund that had to be liquidated through all this. Bloomberg reporting another $2 billion worth of block trades traded this morning. Shares were under pressure yesterday. Just pretty steep falls, though, when you go back to last month. Viacom hit a record $101 a share. Discovery last month also at 78. You could see we're trading.
I could get these two at 40. I put an order, it never filled. So yeah, still there is room to play. I think if you buy it now or you get it around 40, you gonna gain like 30% easily.
Future.
No financial advice though, so your decision. But yeah, I was looking at OCGN. I think this one should have a positive news someday. I still think that this will go up. This will go up in my opinion, but there's just, I am already in too many risky assets that this is just too much right now. I try to keep it simple at this point, but after looking at the whole portfolio, I think we have relatively good movement across the board, really big gainers here, and at the same time Mara and Riot, two of the big mining Bitcoin mining companies, are on downtrend. Yeah, so let's keep it as it is for now. I will be back in an hour or two, so see you guys again. Thanks for joining in.